We're going to start out with a cat story. Early in the morning, I get up to go to work, and my garage is separate. It was in the backyard. So I'm walking from the back of the house to the backyard, and all of a sudden I hear this, and I thought, now I seen them kids playing with a kitten the other day. So I look over my neighbor's yard. Everybody has chain link fences, so it's easy to hop over, and I know everybody. And I see a milk carton upside down. I thought, they put that kitten underneath that milk carton. So I climb over the fence, turn the milk carton over, and no cat. So I look over at the other neighbors. So I climb over their fence, and this cat is all the way in the top of this tree, and it's shaking like a leaf. I'm like, oh man. So I climb up the tree, I get the cat, and this cat is not happy. I mean, it's clung on to me like, claws deep, and it's just about that big. So I get it. I climb down. I'm wondering what in the world is wrong with this. Wonder what's wrong with this kitten that is so scared. I climb over the fence, and as soon as I climb over the fence, two Doberman pinchers come running out, and they are mad. Not one, two. And this cat, man, is just tearing my arm up. All right, now I understand. Huh? Yeah, right. Be careful about climbing trees for scared cats. Amen. All right. We have studied the frankincense. We have studied the special incense for the altar. And now I'm going to talk to you about the altar of incense and what it's about. The altar of incense was made of wood and covered with gold. And remember, we've always talked that when you see the wood, that it is a typification of Christ's humanity. And the gold is his royalty. The thing is, this wood, and I think I've repeated this before, this wood is a very special wood. It does not corrupt. It's incorruptible, just like Christ was incorruptible. I mean, it is the same thing that Noah's Ark was made of. And if I am given to understand correctly, that in Turkey they have actually found the Ark, but that government will not allow us near it. Now, if it's still there, that's some tough wood, you know? All right, so this altar is very special. It's right next to the very last boundary for the Ark of the Covenant. And now, this whole area that is behind the altar of incense is very, very special. As a matter of fact, even the high priest, when he's doing his basic duties, will not touch that veil. Won't touch it at all. But getting back to the altar, there are 4 horns upon the 4 corners. You see them right here. 4 horns. These here 4 corners. And there's a reason for them. These horns stand or typify for power and authority. When you look at a ram or a steer, especially one of them longhorns, man, you do not want to tangle with one of them. A ram, my sister-in-law used to raise goats. And there was this one particular goat. It was a ram, actually. And do not ignore that thing. Do not ignore the ram. he will come up and he will stand on his hind legs and butt you in the shoulder or in the back of the head. It hurts. But he's not being mean. He's wanting to play. But playing with a ram is, wow. Well, yeah, but actually what they want you to do is grab a hold of their horns and wrestle with them. But they're proud of those horns. That is their weapon. That is their power. So is with the altar of incense. It had a crown of gold, and I'm going to show that to you a little later. This one's not as good of showing the crown around the top. And was carried about by 2 staves or handles. It stood in front of the veil of the holy place. All right. The staves. You'll notice that every time we talk about these different furnitures or instruments, they're always talking about staves and rings, where the stave goes through the ring, and that's how they carry it. They carry it on their shoulders everywhere, except for the menorah. It's not carried. It's put on a cart. You notice they never mention anything about, all right, well, where do they put the poles or the staves? Where do they put them at? Do they leave them in, or do they take them out? Why? They leave them in. And you want to know why? Because God has a destiny. They are not done traveling. They are not done traveling. And when they are done traveling, you know where that will be? Solomon's temple. Because when they put the Ark of the Covenant and the Altar of Incense and all those in, they take the staves out. They're no longer needed. So they've served their purpose. And sometimes that's the way it is with saints. God uses us in a mighty way to carry His message everywhere. But when it's time for us to go, you don't see them down here anymore. Think about it. They're carrying the message. Everywhere the cloud moves, they break the tent down and they move everything. And the reason that the lamp was never carried by a person is because it has its own power. It moves with the way Christ would move. Here and there, always lighting the way, because they've got to be careful with the menorah, because they don't want the candles to go out. So, in this portion of it, honestly, I have researched till I'm blue in the face. I cannot find how they protected the menorah candles from not going out. I can't find it. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's just that I haven't found it. Yes, it's supposed to never go out. They're supposed to light it in the evening and the morning. And here's the amazing thing. On the altar of incense, when they get done with the menorah, they immediately, evening and morning and evening, they burn incense. Right after they get done cleaning the menorah, which is done twice a day. They do it at the same time. All right. I might have got ahead of myself, which I always do, it seems like. In the altar of incense was a type of Christ, our intercessor. Incense is clearly a type of prayer. Let my prayer be set forth before thee as incense. This incense was offered by the high priest every morning and evening. And in other words, the priests could do the lamp. They can do the bread. They couldn't do the altar of incense. It had to be done by a high priest. That's how important it was. The closer you get to the veil, the more important the mission. Let my prayer be set before. All right. This incense of our high priest every morning and evening. Likewise, Jesus was our high priest interceding for us. Once a year, at the Day of Atonement, remember we talked about that. That's the Passover. Yom Kippur. All three are the same thing. All right. So at Yom Kippur, once a year, blood from the altar of sacrifice was put on the horns of the incense altar. Christ could not have interceded for us as a high priest if he had not first shed his blood. So, the high priest, before he goes back behind the curtain of the holiest of holies, before he can do that, what does he do? He goes to the altar, a brazen altar, takes the blood of a bullock. Oh, no, wait a minute. If I get into that, I'll be in here forever. The two goats, remember? One is the scapegoat, one is for the Lord. The one for the Lord, he takes the blood and he puts it in a bowl. Any ear, thumb, toe. Remember what we talked about that? Hearing the word, working for the Lord, following his path. Then he would go in to the holy place, to the altar of incense, and he would put blood on the four corners of the altar. Why am I having a problem? As usual. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. All right. Here's the altar of incense, light, table of showbread. Notice how this is actually shorter than this, because this is actually the tallest thing, the tallest piece of furniture in the holy place. This is 36 inches tall. We have absolutely no figure for this, but we know that this is taller than any of these two. So, here's the altar of incense. I'm telling you, what are you going to do? Wrong direction. Yeah, I know. Wait a minute. Am I going nuts here?
I won't touch that one with you.
Ah, the love. That ain't right. Here we go. You see how the staves are still in, and here you're showing a little bit of the crown. There's a crown that goes around it. It's usually from rabbinical, not Bible, rabbinical. It's supposed to be leaves and flowers that go around it with points. And it's about a hand's breadth. It's supposed to be a hand's breadth from here up. All right. Here you see the blood on the four corners for the sacrifice. That was weird. Don't ask me. This thing, probably the batteries are dead on it, just like the batteries were dead my laptop the last time. Victory loves preparation. I blew it. All right. in the church, the incense typifies the prayers of the saints. Now, we don't use incense at all, but our prayer is the incense to God. And if you look in Revelations, and in Second Thessalonians 2, 6 and 8, and in Revelation, where did I put it at? Revelation 5, 8, and 8, 3 through 4. These kind of typify that our prayers are being sent up. Every prayer that's ever been prayed. I mean, not only does God answer your prayers, but He's keeping a record in a bowl of every prayer ever prayed. And in Revelation, when this whole thing's starting to come to an end, He's going to pour them out. And fire and thunderings and moon, dark, and all of that is because of our prayer. Think about it. All right, so if it were not for the prayers of the saints, nothing, I like this, nothing would hinder Satan from having full reign right away on the earth. There's nothing that could stop him. Our prayers stop and hinder him from what he actually wants to accomplish. Now here's the thing. Pretty soon, remember, here's the devil, and here's Christ, and he wants to kill him. Now that doesn't seem like a good idea, but you got to understand, you go all the way back to Genesis. And what did he curse Lucifer with? You'll eat from the dust of the ground to all the days of thy life. He is like a heroin addict. He has no choice. He is addicted to human flesh. Because why? Where did we come from? We came from the dust of the ground. From the dust of the ground, and you'll return to the dust. So he is hungry for destroying the things of God. Our prayers stop him from doing what he most wants to do. All right, so if we're not praying, pow, we're in trouble. When I have a problem, probably because I've skipped prayer a couple of times, and this right here starts to tell me what to do, and this right here, guess what? This little flesh loves to hold hands with the devil. I guarantee it. Brother Hanthorne was telling his testimony. We've known each other for about 17, 18 years. And we have a type and shadow of the same thing. Which I can't speak of on the... Yeah. No, that's not a good idea. Anyway, well, I have actually refrained from telling my testimony because one, I didn't want my kids to hear it. I really didn't. I didn't want my mom and dad to hear it. It had broken their heart. But my mom and dad have passed away. And my daughter and my son are grown. But now I've got grandchildren. And I don't want them to think that there is a generational curse that was broken in the water. When you go down in that water, just like the brazen laver, that curse is gone. All right. I'm getting off track. All right. Since horns denote power, it is through prevailing prayer that we have power with God. the thing which made the cloud of fragrance rise was the fact that the incense was poured over red hot coals. Well, actually, it's two things. The high priest goes out and he has a censer and a shovel. And he scoops up a hot coal and he puts it on it's kind of like a bowl with a lid. And he brings it into the altar of incense. Before he goes back in there, he's got to wash his hands and feet every time. And there is actually a place where it talks about that these Levites and priests that are moving around on the outside, every time they start to head towards the gate, brother, did you wash? Did you wash? Everybody says it to him. Everybody repeats it. You walk past the hallway, did you wash? As a warning. Because if he goes in there, no matter what he's wanting to do, if he goes in there without washing, he dies. There are certain things that happen. All right, so the thing is, he takes this coal and he places it on the altar. He places it here on the altar. And then he goes and he gets a handful of the incense and salt. He mixes salt in it right now before he puts it over the hot coals. And he just puts it over the hot coals. And those hot coals plus a specific ingredient causes the incense to immediately go straight up. And see, that was the secret, one of the secrets of the incense, which the Korahites wouldn't share with anybody. But it's a good reason, because they have, well, about 2,000, 3,000 years now, 3,500 years, they have kept this secret. And nobody knows it but them. Do you know that when they go to get married, that the woman, the groom, bride, Mike, the bride, yeah, that's what happens when I forget to take my pills. Anyway, the bride cannot wear perfume. You want to know why? Because they don't want anybody to accuse the Korahites that they are using it for personal gain or for personal use. Which, if a person does that, they're cut off from the tribe and they're excommunicated out. Get out. You've broken your vow. It's that serious. So they don't. The lady doesn't wear any perfume on that day, especially. All right, so the priest could have dumped great quantities of incense upon the altar without any cloud rising if the fire had been allowed to go out. That's the reason why it's done twice a day. This illustrates the difference between saying prayers and praying through. Did everybody get that? The difference between, now lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep, if I should die before I wake. That the Lord, yeah, I forgot the last part.
You didn't take your pills.
Yeah, there you go. The thing is, there is a difference between praying that prayer and the prayer we hear in there. Big, big difference. It's the earnestness. It's the earnestness that makes the greater sent. I can't do it now, but there is a big difference between worship and praise. Worship and praise, they work hand in hand. But worship can be powerful. Very, very powerful.
Yes, sir.
All right. The priest could not allow it to go out. This illustrates the difference between saying prayers and praying through. We are told that it is essential, fervent, and red-hot prayer of a righteous man avails much. This altar was to be carried out by staves. No matter where we are in our wilderness journey, we can carry with us the powerful weapon of prayer.
Amen.
The incense was to be beaten very, very, with it's kind of like an anvil. But anyway, they beat it so that it's a very fine, very, very fine. And it's actually this incense, even with all the ingredients mixed in, is white. It's a white powder. All right. The incense was beaten very hard, for God answers the smallest prayers. And that was what the significance was. It wasn't big chunks. It was little itty bitty. Those little prayers that you pray, even though it may not even be a fervent prayer, it's answered. And that's another thing. I mean, there are times you don't have time to spend an hour in prayer. And automobile accident. You lost your dog. Things like that, things happen. And they happen instantaneously, so you have to be prepared instantaneously with prayer. God answers those, just like He would in a prayer of earnestness. To counterfeit the incense meant death, and still means death. In other words, it had the incense, one, in its manufacturing, and its apothecary, what they would call, has to be perfect. The altar, having the incense, must never go out, and must be performed in a proper manner. Given an example, I don't know, I think it's shown this one. No, it's not. I'm trying to remember those guys' names. Nahabi and another. It's very hard for. I cannot pronounce Hebrew. I guarantee it. These two men, two priests, they let the fire go out. So they went into the encampment and they took a coal off of somebody else's fire and they brought it in and they lit the altar of incense and they put the incense on it and they immediately died. They had to be carried out. Because that was their responsibility. I mean, all you got to do is make sure the fire don't go out. That's it. Just don't let the fire go out. And because of irresponsibility. And they could have just said, hey, oh man, let's reignite this fire where it's supposed to be. And we'll talk to the priests in charge, and we'll talk to Aaron, and all they would have had to have done was repent. But they try to cover it up by going outside the tent or outside the gate to get strange fire. There are things that happen in this world that are very, very dangerous. And some of these things I would prefer not to teach because it is very serious. There are some people that disagree with me, but I wouldn't want to put a rattlesnake in your bed. But there are things that they done. Remember, I said they done this. If you think about it, they done this every day Twice a day. Morning and evening. Morning and evening. Morning and evening. Evening and morning. Every day. And I'm thinking, how many times did Daniel pray when they told him that we'll throw you in a lion's den if we catch you praying?
3 times.
He prayed 3 times. You know why he paid that 3rd time? You gonna tell me I can't pray? I won't pray twice. I'll pray 3 times, and I'll open the window up so you can hear it. Kind of like what Shane's talking about when people are traveling in traffic and you can hear the boom, 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 boom. He's saying, hey, turn yours up. Drown it out. Yeah. I like that idea. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
The thing is, with a lot of this, I've got to be careful where I get my information from. Just like this first one here, that was from the Catholic Church. So I kind of got a red marker and mark this out. But the thing is, you got to understand that with other denominations, you can take the meat and throw away the bones, but you've got to be careful because you can get that bone stuck in your throat. Right. So I take a little more diligence in this. Here's an idea that I kind of like. This guy comes up with this concept, and he says, we always look from the brazen altar to the laver to the candlestick to the bread to the incense altar to the Ark of the Covenant. What if you think, now this is in a 2-dimensional, I'm not talking 3 or 4 dimensions, I'm talking 2-dimensional. What if God, how does he look at it? From the Ark of the Covenant to the Altar of Incense to the light to the bread to the laver to the brazen altar. He's looking that way. And he's seeing somebody sacrifice an animal because they'd sinned. And they're grievously sorry because they're taking the best they have and sacrificing it. An innocent animal that never harmed anybody, especially a lamb. You know, they're so defenseless. I mean, they are completely defenseless. Wolf come along, they're done. Bear come along, they're done. That's it. All they can do is run, and they can't even do that very fast. So they take this wonderful little animal that did nothing to nobody, and they have to take its life to pay for the sin that individual committed. And they have to lay their hands, and what they do is they transfer their sin to that animal. Then they kill it. And I think y'all know it. They cut its throat. And as it's bleeding, they catch the blood in a bowl. It's a butcher. It's a sloppy, horrible way to die, but it's quick. They don't, you know, you bleed an animal, it'll bleed out in a minute or 2. Yeah, it's pretty quick. This right here, that's the biggest artery, probably. Yeah, it is the biggest artery in the body. So when they cut that animal's throat, it's done. It's quick. It's not meant to be brutal to the animal, but it's like all the way back in Genesis. What did he do? He covered Adam and Eve with skins of an animal. Didn't say what the animal was, but I'm pretty sure, I'm wondering if it's not a lamb. So the lamb is taken, and its blood is, and God is watching this. And you know, really, I think that God, when he sees these animals dying, I think it breaks his heart. Your sin caused me sorrow. People don't think about that. These sins, every time we commit a sin, Hebrews, everybody believes that Paul wrote Hebrews, and I do too. He said that every time you sin, you hold Christ up to an open shame all over again. And that's what we need to think about in our daily life. Oh God, have I done it again? You know, we have two adversaries, really. This one here and the spiritual one. I don't know why you want me to talk about that. There's a lot. I got involved for a while with witchcraft and so forth. So what they teach you or what you learn is garbage. But these spirits are, you go to a seance and your great-grandmother's Louise is called up and she starts telling you stuff that only your grandmother knew to tell you. And you think, wow. You know what it is? It's very simple. When Satan fell, he took 1/3 of the angels of heaven. Guess what? They've been living and flying around for 7,000 years, or 6, probably. Well, they were probably here before we were. So the thing is, they have been studying humanity for 6,500 years. You don't think they don't know that you got one probably following you everywhere you go, and every word you speak, he hears it. And when they have a seance, if they want to, all they got to do is have that demon pop up and say, man, that's Grandma so-and-so. And guess what? That demon knows everything you've ever done. And he'll bring it up. Oh, yeah. But you see, that's the thing. These people that deal with familiar spirits have a lot of power. Because since they're dealing with these spirits, they know the dirty secrets about you. Unless you go down in the water.
That's right.
That water does more for you than you can realize.
That's right.
It protects you and shields you from those things. I guarantee you, if you're prayed up and you walk into one of them things, that woman will get up and run away.
Right.
They're scared of you. They are terrified of you because you have power they don't have.
Yeah.
And not only that, we can cast that devil out of them. We have power in prayer that we don't realize. We cannot see in the heavenlies. We cannot see in the supernatural. We see things darkly, as looking through a dark glass, like your sunglasses. It's like that. You ever walk into a room that doesn't have lights, like just with sunglasses on? And it's like, what? Where is everybody? You can't see hardly. That's what looking into the supernatural is like. There are things that God gives us. In essence, and I'm talking about now, the gifts and fruits of the Spirit come from what? Prayer, incense. The more you pray, and if you get to asking, and be careful what you ask for, you might get it. I used to go in the prayer room. We had a big prayer. We had a ladies' prayer room and a guys' prayer room, and we were required every service to pray 30 minutes before we went into the sanctuary. And if you were an elder of the church or an officer or anything, you definitely better be in there because the pastor's going to be watching. And don't worry about him. He'd probably been praying an hour before he even came to church. The thing is, I used to sit down and I'd open up 2 Corinthians 12 and I want it all. I want all the gifts. I want all the gifts, but I didn't ask for the fruits. And you know what happened? Michael, I'm going to take you on a journey. Remember what Brother Hanthorne said? He took me through a journey. He said, Michael, what would you do if I give it to you? What would you do if I give you every gift? You've got total power over it. It's yours. You can do whatever you want with it. What would you do with it? And I contemplated that for months. And then he says, Michael, do you realize the responsibility you're asking? And I got thinking about that for months more. And it wasn't until one day there was a black evangelist came to our church. Now, back in the day, there was a lot of tension between black and white. But this man had he had a gift of faith that was amazing. And he was a young man, very young man. And he preached at our church for a whole week. We had a revival. And I guess about 5 or 6 months later, he came around by himself. His wife wasn't with him. And he came around by himself and came to our church. And he was so quiet. And the Lord says, Michael, yeah, I want you to go over to him. What? He's an evangelist. He's a man of God. To me, that's like a priest. You want me to go? You gotta be. I was terrified. He says, it's all right. I just could not stop. The next thing I know, I will go over to this man. And I turned to him, and he just turned around and hugged me. He would not let go. He said, I'm so lonely. And the Spirit of the Lord came on me, and for the first time I spoke in tongues with an anointing. And it shocks everybody in the church so much. Even the man who usually was the interpreter, he says, it just shocked me so much I didn't know what to do. It was my compassion towards this man over the fear of God that let it come out. But then now, I have a responsibility to be sensitive in prayer that if God needs to use me, I am uncontaminated at this moment. My conscience is clear. And that doesn't mean that I'm perfect and I don't make mistakes, because I'm telling you what, I'm the king of mistakes. But the one thing, like one guy's asked me, what makes you think you're so tough? I said, I ain't tough. I'm just forgiven. There you go. That's what sets us apart. Mercy. And we're going to get to mercy the next time, because we're going to talk about the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat. Because the mercy seat is what it's all about. All right? God bless.